Yeah, I'm happy to do that. By the way, before I do that, I'll let you know that I spent a fair bit of time. I've got another shopping list of ideas for you that I'll share once you've got Emergence 2021 behind you, because I know you've had a lot on your plate, Well, my background, I was raised in Montreal, Canada, so I've got a bit of an accent. But my career started in stockbroking. I spent the first 6 years of my life in that field, mostly as a trader, as a desk trader. Involved in, because I worked for an American broker that was based in Montreal. And so it was US trades for stocks and bonds, and of course, local shares on the Montreal Stock Exchange and the over-the-counter market. And I worked in Montreal, then I spent time in New York, and I ended up actually in Sydney, Australia, working for Bankers Trust, who had a subsidiary there called BT, which is still around today, of course. And towards the end of my 6 years, I got involved in computers rolling out with BT, the money market system and the portfolio management system. And I realized that I had a great interest in computers. So I then moved on and spent the next 15 years of my life working for a couple of major international computer companies. I was involved in sales, marketing. They sent me to New Zealand for a while, a lot of travel. I did a lot of interesting things. And what I learned there was, whereas in stockbroking, I learned, because I had to do my stockbroker certification and the training for that, as well as studying investment analysis. That was a good learning curve. But in the computer industry, I think most of the technology that I was involved in is dated now. But what I really learned in a corporate environment was that to be successful, you had to think in terms of partnership. And it's a philosophy that's carried with me for a long time, in the sense that in a big corporation, the people above you, the people that are alongside you, and those that work for you, unless you understand each of them individually and work in partnership, your career could be sidelined, right? Particularly the ones above you. And so that was the major thing that I really, at the end of the day, that helps me today. And after that, I was looking for a bit of a change, and I knew some guys in Sydney, because I was in Melbourne at this point, and they had a recruitment business, and I was looking for something that was just a little bit lighter rather than being involved in a big corporation. And we started an executive search firm. It was really interesting because the people we worked for were a lot of startups. There were incubators. We worked with listed companies. We had partners in San Francisco that we worked with. But at the same time, we worked for Telstra and for Hewlett-Packard and big corporations, doing the executive roles, finding general managers, heads of sales, CEOs, board members, and so on. And so as a result of that, I built up a really big network of people in the industry, personal contacts, as well as understanding the nature of the industry, this whole IT&T and internet industry. Because when I worked for a couple of the big companies, I probably knew 90% of those companies, but I didn't get a good handle of the full industry. It's only when you start working with all these, datacoms companies, telecoms companies, software companies, internet companies, and you get close to them at a quite a deep level. Because when you do an executive search, the first thing you say to the owner of the business or the board or the chairman, okay, tell me about your business. Tell me why someone would want to come here and head up the sales group for you, or come and be your CEO. And you go really deep. In fact, even this year, for example, I did an exit on some listed shares, which was a pretty attractive exit. But the company that I exited, who is listed today, was one where I looked at recruiting a CEO for them 20 years ago. So there's an example of where the knowledge and the connections a long time ago helped me today. But probably the most important piece of the puzzle, which really helps me today, is about people. Because one of the things we had to do was to start using scientific tools to assess people. Because what would happen is we would do a search and someone would say, Frank, can you tell me why you'd hire, person number A over person number B for the CEO role? Who would you choose? And that put a lot of stress on me, because I was happiest when the client would choose. So if it didn't work out so well, it wasn't my choice. But when the pressure was on me just to sort of give them an indication, was a point when I realized we had to really put a lot of effort into using robust assessment tools for behavior testing, cognitive testing, social skills, as well as our sheer experience in terms of assessing people based on people-to-people human behavior. But as a consequence of that, we really learned, we had people in our team, we're quite a big operation at this stage, who, were graduates in psychology and in HR and so on, that we trained up to do this, as well as working with outside firms. And in my mind, what clarified things was that I now see people as being kind of unique in the sense that, some people are suited to sales and some are suited to marketing and some are fantastic project managers, but don't put them into sales. Some can manage managers, some can manage anyone. It's with the art of getting a sense for what people's natural modus operandi is, and then sharing with them that knowledge, so that if, for example, a lot of people want to be the CEO, but when you convince them that maybe their natural talents is that they should be the CTO, or maybe they should be doing something else, well, by the way, this is my little dog. I know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 I can hear you. Can you? Uh, I can hear you. Yeah. And Fong, can you hear? Yeah. Well, I can hear you. Can others hear? Is the question? Mhm. Well, I can hear, but I'm live. Yeah. Um, well, I think at the end of the day, a lot of companies fail. It gets down to people. And so, and part of it, in some cases, it's that people are just not suited to maybe with the journey that they've embarked upon. But also, sometimes it's because we haven't put in place the correct forms of engagement. Okay. Um, and so we looked at that and we said, okay, what is the issue that we're dealing with here? We've got a founder, the share holders want to assist the founder, and the founder is looking for assistance from the shareholders, but there seemed to be a disconnect in the realities of it. Because what would happen is we say, we might put someone onto the board, for example, of the company, hoping that that would help provide the bridge between our shareholders within Melbourne Angels and with the founder and the company. What seemed to happen was the board director would go on, and then the communication channels didn't improve all that much, mainly because when you're on a board, there are certain confidential issues, as you know, and issues to do with privacy and so on. And so it didn't work. And then separately, what was happening is maybe some of the shareholders, because they weren't getting information, would be calling up the founder and having a bit of a chit chat. You know, it's a call where they sort of say, hey, just calling to say hello, seeing how it's going. And the founder, of course, you know, takes the call. They have a chat for half an hour. And I was worried about that because he'd have multiples of those, and that's a waste of time. You know, why would you communicate with one person when you can communicate to everyone? Yeah, to all your shareholders. Sorry, Steve, I can't hear you now. I can hear you now. Can you hear me? Yeah. So that's when we came up with the idea of what we call the shareholder rep. And the shareholder rep is basically someone appointed that represents the shareholders, okay? Because the board appointee, in many ways, represents the company as much as maybe an investor group, right? And so we brought in the shareholder rep concept, which was a person that would really bridge the gap and represent all the shareholders, and would run regular quarterly updates with the founder so that we had a single channel of communication. And because the founder was after, you know, contacts and assistance with investment, partnerships, all these sorts of things, and we're trying to find a way, how do we efficiently make this happen? Because the founder doesn't have many resources, and talking to shareholders is a waste of time, in my view, right? Individually, at least, okay, not as a group. So we brought into place the shareholder rep, and then we started running these quarterly sessions that we organize. So the shareholder rep's job it is, right, to organize the whole session on Zoom, send out the invites, and all that the founder, CEO, has to do is front up for an hour and really tell us what's happening in the business. There's no prep required at all. And so we found it really successful because we could then, in fact, a bit like yourself, Steve, you know, you're running a business, and to prep for a group of shareholders, you can spend a lot of time thinking, oh, what am I going to cover here? What do they want to hear? And so on. But if it's reverse engineered and I come and ask you questions, a bit like this session today, and I sort of say, okay, Steve, give me an update. Give us, our shareholders, an update on what's happening on the sales side at the moment, right? And maybe any potential travel plans for customers overseas. Tell us what's happening with marketing initiatives. And, you know, you can answer that because you know exactly what's happening. You've got meetings with that and so on. On the financials, Steve, for today is our first session. Let's not worry about it because you provided us with a written report of financials. So we'll jump over that one. Tell us about new products. What are you doing there? Really stuff that you as the founder, straight off the top, you can answer those. And suddenly the founder would feel really comfortable, right, with these sessions because they didn't have to prep for them. It took no work. And yet in those sessions, they were getting ideas from shareholders about, oh, well, listen, I know, you know, the general manager of that company, or I've got a brother-in-law that help you on that, or, you know, all this resource would come to the surface, and the founder would find that these sessions were actually valuable and took no work whatsoever. And it was interesting, even today, there was a company in New Zealand, for example, that I've invested in, and it took me a little while to get him on the roadshow with these quarterly ones. And even today, he sent me a message. He's jumped the gun a bit because he sent me a message saying, oh, when can we run the next quarterly update for the shareholders, right? Because he knows he doesn't have to do anything. He's just got to rock up for an hour, right, and answer a few questions. And so that has changed the whole setting, because the shareholder rep then represents the shareholders and talks to the shareholders and has the power of that group. because previously what was happening, every little shareholder had no power whatsoever. They couldn't get organized, like a disorganized group. But having a shareholder rep that represents the shareholders, suddenly we're able to say to the founder, well, listen, if you want funding, right, here's the thinking of the shareholders at the moment. We're going to have to uplift this or change that or look at a convertible note or, whatever it is. So to me, and I produced a paper on that, Steve, which I shared with you, I think, at one stage in its original form. But that's something maybe we can document and release. And it really explains how you set it up, at Zoom calls, when you run it. It's always 4 weeks after the end of the quarter to give the founder an opportunity to get his thoughts together. It's about a 2-pager, which just is like a dummy's guide to doing these things. And all that investors need to do is agree up front with the founder that, assuming there's a board role, okay, we'll put someone on the board and they've got board duties, but we're going to have a shareholder representative that's going to take the lead. And then what happens, and I had one recently whereby I took the lead with one of our investments, and one of the guys in my shareholder group then stepped up onto the board because the company was looking for a good board director. He went on, and then 2 months later they made him the chairman, which was great. But because he was so conditioned to these quarterly things, he's actually taken over the running of them now. I don't need to do it. So I've basically now trained up the company chairman, right, to do this. So like all things in life, we learn to do something and then we run with it. And he's now running them. He invites everyone. And so I can spend time looking after other companies. But to me, that's a really important thing for investors to be doing, Okay. Okay. Okay, so you're asking me about the sort of key attributes we look at in founders. That's actually not so easy, but there's a couple of things that I do look for, and one is whether they've got a partnership mentality or whether they think that they've got all the answers. Yeah, some people are very much sort of it's mine kind of approach. We look for people that really can work in partnership with other people, and also someone who's prepared to hand over the baton to the next person, because I believe that life is like a relay race, that no individual should overstay their mark. I see boards, for example, where people are on some boards for 10 years and they should have left 7 years ago because they're not adding enough value. CEOs and founders sometimes need to move aside to become the CTO, founder CTO or something like that. So that preparedness to accept the fact that others, right, may add value. And those are the two attributes that I look for in people. Okay. Well, okay. So the question is the difference between a dysfunctional board and a good board. That's really it's a tricky one because human nature being what it is, you have dynamics happening with the different players, and I'm not sure beyond assessing, individuals to go on the board and getting the right dynamics. It really just uses good common sense because each of them is different. It's hard for me to hang my hat on a particular model. We do, for example, I know in the case of, say, there's a good example with Rome to Rio, which was one of our investments that we exited last year. They were bought by a European company, Go Euro. But that was a very successful investment for us. And for that particular one, we looked inside of Melbourne Angels at the skill sets, and we cherry picked the person that we thought had the most tourism travel experience, and that proved to be a very successful appointment. So we apply the same methodologies as I would have used, say, in recruiting board members back in my executive search days, where you look at the competencies across the spectrum of your board and saying, okay, what should we try to fill? But it's a topic that could go deeper, but I'm not sure I could in this session give the answer. Yeah, well, and can I compliment you, Steve, because you're asking me now about going deeper into the organization and how do we embrace the other staff members. Um, some founders that suffer from founderitis, where it's everything to them, it can be difficult to go deeper. They're almost wanting to sort of create a barrier, and when you have that, it's a hard one to navigate. But generally, where you have, like yourself, that preparedness to do those things, then we leverage those because we know at least we're dealing with those companies that will enable us to get closer to the other team members and work with them. It's a maturity issue that we see in some founders that's lacking in others. And generally, when you see those things lacking, it is a great cause for concern. So I don't know whether that's sort of, yeah. Well, I've got more of a sales and marketing background, and so I think that's an area where we often see failures, where the founder, talks about hiring someone in sales to go and sell the thing because the revenues often there's no revenues. Oh, let's hire a salesman. Then they hire a salesman, and part of my career, I spent a couple of years running actually the entire sales training program for a major computer company for Asia Pacific. So I got a good idea as to the different kinds of salesmen, whether they're rainmakers at the top of the top end, pay, people who earn big money, or whether they're good account managers, whether they're new business, there's a whole different range of salespeople. For a lot of founders, a salesman is a salesman. They're not able to bring it down to a real skill set. And so I try to get involved there in the appointment of those sort of people. But in the other areas like accounting or admin or project management, there's generally other people in our investor base that have those skills. And so, as an example, recently, one of the companies where we invested in, we had a shareholder update, which in their case, they run exactly as I would like to do it, but they run it themselves, which is fine if they want to run it. And, we talked about the new software that they've released. So a couple of people of shareholders put up their hands for the user experience to have a look at that. One was a CIO and the other was an IT kind of person. Then we talked about fundraising. So I'm guiding them a little bit in terms of the different options for them, which included talking with yourself, Steve, and they may be a little bit early at the moment for that. I think it'll be internally funded for the bit of money that they need. But so what we're trying to do is flush out, and I do it by asking people, okay, who in the team here could help opening up that door over here, or maybe finding new premises or whatever it is, and try to offload the founder from all of these things and get them to focus on the business. Steve, you're asking me what things have you done that I've seen that could be useful to others? Yeah. Um, there'd be a shopping list, quite honestly. I think that your ability to engage, that engagement level across the board with your staff, to your shareholders, to your customers, that the ability to think in terms of what they need and re-engineer the business incrementally based on inputs that you're getting from those around you. It's really, in many ways, it's probably common sense when you think about it, but also it's your experience in this segment, which is quite complex in some ways. This fundraising space where you're dealing with government laws and a lot of terminology and so on. Luckily, you've got the career background to be able to do that. But I think engagement, the ability to engage, is very, very important. Is it? And now, listen. Before you close on me, I did want to say one thing, which I'm looking forward to the Emergent 2021, and I was reflecting back on last year when we had the Emergence 2020, which of course was held in the Sydney Hilton Hotel, and it was really good because I enjoyed meeting all the different participants, and you had some listed companies, right? And excuse me, you had listed companies, and there was one there that I knew the company because I had a few shares in it, and I walked up, but I didn't have too many shares in it because I didn't really know what the company was doing. I went to their AGMs, and at AGMs, they vote for things and get rubber stamps, but often there's not enough communications. And anyway, there was an opportunity there to the founder, the chairman. This is a company called OptiScan, which was one of your customers, and the chairman, executive chairman, was there. Was Darren, and I walked up to him, and we spent half an hour together. And I had my wife with me, and they have some wonderful medical products. And I said to Tracy, I said, my wife, I really like what they're doing, but I think now that I know what they're doing, because I've had a chance to actually have a proper half an hour talk to the chairman, this company is investable, but no one seems to know about it, right? And so you did a good job making people aware of it because, I bought a number of shares there. I think they were 4 cents at the time. And, now they're around about 25 cents, right? 12 months later. And it's because, he went there and was able to share what the company was doing to this much broader audience. And so as an investor, I mean, that's really fantastic from my point of view. But also it highlights the fact that listed companies out there, which often you don't think about too much, you expect them to be able to market themselves properly. They often can't. The small companies struggle. And so the things like the Emergence and what you're doing with Wholesale Investor is a wonderful thing. And from my point of view, a great platform to work with. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so Steve, you're saying you're going to have a 2-minute break so you can fix your audio so everyone hopefully can hear you very shortly. Yeah.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. Now, I still have no idea if you can hear me. We've spent this time trying to get the audio right, which is not ideal. But Fong Jek, I just want to say thank you for being patient. And Frank, thank you for being amazing whilst I had no audio, no sound coming through and repeating my questions. So let's see if people can hear me. I'm sure I'll get message. Oh my God, someone just wrote they can hear me. What a miracle. All it took was just refreshing. It's almost like a Windows scenario where you just hit Control-Alt-Delete and it comes back on and then magically you got sound again. How ridiculous is that? Anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, now I'm going to introduce one of our good friends who I've spent a lot of time with and really helped me, Fong Jek. Welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Okay. So look, I've said, from my perspective, when you look at this space as a whole, there's obviously a lot of moving pieces to it. There's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of things coming your way. And I've found that for me, every time I've been in Singapore, everything just moves at an incredibly fast pace. Right. So as a first step, before we get on to sort of what you're seeing at the moment, I'd love to give a bit of a background as yourself, about Jubilee Capital Management, but also just your own sort of personal career as well, because I think you've got quite an interesting background.
Okay, I'll do that. So basically, I've spent the last, say, about 25 years in mainly in investment space, right? And I started my career with Arthur Andersen, basically doing a lot of strategy consulting work, corporate finance, restructuring, BPR, the usual strategy consulting work, and has a very good foundation built with this great firm that I really missed. And so I've been working with a lot of SMEs, family offices, family businesses at the time, helping them with expansion. And then from then on, I moved into the telecom, media, and technology space. And this is a space that I spent the next kind of close to 20 years now, looking at various type of technology investments. Most of the work that I do is surrounds strategic investments, venture investments, and M&A. And within the M&A space, I look at two main sectors. Beyond TMT, I spent in between, say, about 4 or 5 years in the fast-moving FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods space. So I just give some examples, right? So when I first started my TMT career, I worked with Singapore Technologies Telemedia, and was very fortunate to be part of the new M&A team at the moment, looking at the new business development strategy, strategic investment opportunity in the telecom, in the data center space. So there was this great company that during the first boom in the internet world, a company called Exodus, right? They were rolling out data centers across US, and at a time when web pages are just popping up, and any company that put a .com behind will get a huge valuation uplift. So everyone was exuberant.
Those were the good days.
Yeah, good days, right? Rushing to register the .com in the company, in the register. And so we saw an opportunity to kind of build up a data center franchise across Southeast Asia. So at the time, with the foresight of our CEO at the ST Telemedia side, we started to invest, building up data centers in Singapore and in Thailand, and also have a partnership with Hong Kong and Shanghai. And then the opportunity came when the internet bubble went burst, right? And there was a company, small little company in Chapter 11 called Equinix, right? They had a lot of good customers, but they were out of cash. And the note holders was climbing over them, trying to get them to recapitalize themselves. And we were approached, and at ST Telemedia we saw the golden opportunity to build a global platform, in the data center business. So there we were. I think it was 2001 at the time. We did a 3-way merger, and I was heavily involved as a commercial lead in the M&A to merge 15 data centers.
That must have been a nightmare to organize a 3-way merger.
It was very interesting. I mean, we had good advisors from Credit Suisse, an investment banker there, who was MD and now the CEO of ST Telemedia.
Was that pre-virtual data rooms at that time?
Yeah, pretty much pre. Right? A lot of it was physical, right? And we have to go on site and go through all the arch files, flip through the papers, tick the box, check the papers, and try to get all the question answers.
The poor analysts.
The poor analysts, that's right. So that was a great deal, and indeed to today it has given a very high return to ST Telemedia. So that the 15 data center that was merged, one party had cash and no customer, and another party has customers but no cash, and we had the fortunate the benefit of having both customer and cash. So anyway, that was a good deal. Today you see Equinix as one of the biggest data center operator. I think it's a very proud project that most of us who were involved were very happy to be involved in. So from then on, I was overseeing some of our investments in India, in the telecom space. I was involved in Indonesian deals in the telecom space, and also started my the next 15 years in looking to China-related investments. I spent some time in the consumer goods, working with Kraft Foods as in their Asia Pacific headquarters based out of Singapore, but looking at Greater China investments. So went around to Asia looking for new Asian brands that Kraft would be interested in acquiring. And it was a very interesting process because the way US does FMCG M&A deals versus the way it's done in Asia is very different. I'll just give you an example. In Kraft, they have a very elaborate process where a lot of the deals that we would like to propose from Asia to US, we would have to do a lot of deck work, a lot of analysis, to build a business plan, build a financial model, calculate the synergies, give them the NPV for the synergy, and all that to seek approval before the first contact. But in Asia, people start their first contact anywhere, right? In the coffee shop, in restaurant, KTV, wherever.
I was going to say, or over drinks. That would be the usual first spot.
Precisely. So the approach is very different, but of course, the size matters, right? For a huge company where there's a lot of corporate governance and the procedures and processes in place, we have to make sure that we don't over message, or we don't send the wrong message to potential target companies. Whereas for Asian companies, SMEs and venture deals, it's a lot more casual, and you try to originate through different approaches that we can do. So I spent some time with Prof and was also involved in a family business. Because since your watch, I was the GM for China, helping them with their expansion in China from Singapore. They were at the time one of the largest Southeast Asian watch retailer, handling a lot of great brands from Watchland Group from Switzerland. And there's a huge opportunity in China for luxury brands. So I was involved helping them with the expansion and so in the listing in Hong Kong. And well, just to cut it short, the last part of my career was I spent some time in media business and media entertainment. I was with the Media Corp, again in M&A, corporate development strategy, corporate function, helping them with the China, looking at China deals, and I was overseeing our investment in Vietnam, in Indonesia as well. And the last 6 years, basically, I was running Jubilee Capital. I went to China to do Tsinghua to do my EMBA and got to meet a lot of great people, high energy, all wanting to create business, invest in Southeast Asia. So we created a venture capital fund management business out of Singapore. So I'm the founder in this firm. These last 6 years have been investing out of our 2 funds in early stage companies, pre-A to early B, up to 3 million check size per deal. And also last 3 years, I was involved in cryptocurrency investments and a blockchain fund. Very exciting ride. Investing in Telegram, investing in the digital asset exchange in Switzerland, and a lot of ICOs, IEOs, and now DeFi and
NFTs.
Yeah,
and NFTs, I'm sure the latest trend to come out. Okay, now, just want to make sure, I'm just asking this to everyone, just to make sure you can still hear me, because I basically had sound come back in my audio, and I just heard someone mention that they can't hear me again, which I just want to confirm. But your time at Media Corp was when you really started to get interested into the venture space? Was that what sort of triggered it? Because you started coming across all these sort of exciting sort of new technology companies, and of course, the Singapore government at that time mandated, a sort of great strategy for investing into innovation.
Not quite. Actually, during the first dot-com boom, there were a lot of venture opportunities, and I created my first corporate VC at the time with SD Telemedia. There was a very famous Asia Pacific VC firm called H&Q, Hansberg and Queens, I think. It's H&Q Asia Pacific. We had a joint venture in Hong Kong, basically to look into investments in what we call ASP at the time, because there wasn't a lot of the websites. And mobile smartphones have not really taken off. It was just 3G, and 3G was just starting. And we were looking at application service provider kind of platform and investment opportunity. Today we call it apps, right? It's just different term. It's nothing. There's nothing new under the sun. What we're seeing today, we were a beneficiary of what has been invested a long time.
Do you know what I find funny? It's like how, let's go back sort of 4 or 5 years, everything was about big data. And then all of a sudden, at some point, it moved to AI and machine learning. And then now it's sort of drifting to deep learning. It's all the same, but it just changes form and changes titles as it sort of goes through.
That's right. Different names, different form, but it's the same thing.
Now, obviously, blockchain is, like what I love about the whole ASEAN region is how much it's adopted blockchain and how much it's adopted crypto. And what was surprising for me, I said, we did some large conferences, in Singapore. That's where I met you, actually, I met you at one of our events in Singapore. What are you seeing as far as from an investment perspective? What are the outside of blockchain, I'll get onto blockchain in a second, what are you seeing as the main sort of technological trends that are coming through the Singaporean or the ASEAN sort of startup scene?
In terms of blockchain or outside?
No, outside of blockchain. We'll get onto blockchain next, but just in general technology companies that are coming through.
Right, I think fintech is still a very big play in Singapore. With all the digital banks license being issued right now, wholesale and retail bank, we're seeing a lot more interest. Fintech has been around for a long time, and Singapore being a financial hub, this is a natural segment that we should really invest a lot more and take advantage of it. So payments
and also regtech, right? Like typically with fintech, I've noticed in Singapore, it typically has which Australia really hasn't talked that much about regtech, but I found it very strong in Singapore.
Right. Yeah, Singapore, RegTech, I think I'm not sure about the tech part, but the regulators has been very progressive. And they have a lot of various initiatives to try to provide technology-driven kind of initiatives, right? Not only offering grants, but investing in startups who can develop new platforms that can kind of propel Singapore in terms of our financial status. To give you an example, one of my portfolio company, Spark System, they do FX trading platform, and they're building the next generation FX trading platform based out of Singapore, where they can provide liquidity to all the traders and the treasury managers and banks, etc. So they had a great support from our regulator, MAS. And over the last 4 or 5 years, they have built themselves to a great so-called FX trading platform with a lot of support from banks. After we invested during the Series A, and the last few years, we saw tier 1 banking giants coming in, Goldman Sachs, Citi, HSBC, all encouraging their traders to use the trading platform for trades, FX trades. So in this aspect, as a fintech startup, I think we are seeing Singapore and MAS putting money where the mouth is, really supporting the sector and attracting a lot of new investors, private equities and VCs and the strategic investors to come to Singapore. So I think in that sense, Singapore should continue to benefit from this fintech wave.
Yeah, and any other sectors of note which you think would be interesting to other investors?
No, the other areas, e-commerce is taking off very well. Right? Singapore is a good e-commerce hub where we are facilitating cross-border trades. Of course, you guys would have known about Grab and some of these.
And Gojek.
Yeah, Gojek. Yeah, all this riding Grab, super app that's coming up. I think e-commerce, AI, fintech, these are all great teams at this moment. that Singapore is trying to facilitate investments in the region. Travel
I
is
find, I was going to say quickly, I find also Singapore is really, you just mentioned travel. I find Singapore is really interesting the way the government goes into support the investment into deep tech as well, via obviously SG Innovate and so forth.
That's correct. So deep tech, So deep tech is a very unique sector because of the long cycle time from investment to exit. Not many commercial VCs would be able to invest for the prolonged period of time, and therefore, as you know, I think they are doing a great job in taking a lead by investing, spotting these deep tech companies, and prepared to stay in for longer term, right? To try to see how they can help the company to grow. For other investors who have maybe a shorter time investment horizon, usually deep tech investments is a bit more challenging. So we see a lot of, for example, Israeli deep tech companies who are interested in the Asian market. They come over, they look at the Asian market as great potential. They look for investors who put funds with them to work. But however, when we look at the time to exit, usually that's where there's a lot of challenge. And Singapore, unlike in Hong Kong or in China or in the US, our kind of exit options here is still a bit more limited.
Yeah, and actually I'll get onto that after this next question about blockchain, because I found it interesting. I think me and you have talked about it, and I've also had another chats with other sort of ASEAN VCs where the conversation of SPACs has come up. So that would be a topic for it. So let's get into blockchain and let's get into crypto. What's your observations? What are you seeing as the trends coming out of the region, and what do you think is really driving it?
Yeah, so I think blockchain has gone through various phases of growth, right? From the early days where Bitcoin was just in the hundreds and ETF, the Ethereum was just in the tens. The adoption rate has really taken off this time, and of course, thanks to the Bitcoin price, hitting a high of 58,000. A lot of people have this FOMO kind of effect on them, right? Trying to jump on the bandwagon. But we shouldn't forget the fact that actually it's still a very volatile kind of asset class. Not all the different cryptocurrencies have the stability that we would like to see or have the kind of a strong following as the major currency. Today, I think the cryptocurrency market cap hitting 1.7 trillion right now. It is a very important, significant asset class that a lot of people can't afford to ignore. Even the financial institutions are starting to allocate a small percentage of their portfolio into the space. So I think that's very good for the players and the stakeholders in this sector. In terms of the investment trends, I mean, we used to look at, say, the public blockchain or the dApps as the main driver for growth in this segment. So that's why you see all these ICOs, IEOs, and crypto exchanges that's been popping up. NFTs, of course, is also catching up for a very specific class. And the last year we saw DeFi boom, right? A lot of DeFi, yield farming, very complicated kind of concepts that normal investors or a bit more senior investors in brick and mortar companies would scratch their head and say, they probably find it hard to understand how to decipher this segment. But today, I think this year we see new so-called listing, right? For example, the mining companies are going listing. The Coinbase is going to be listed soon, so that's driving another major wave of interest from investors. So Coinbase, and also
just as a note, you mentioned about the miners listing and also Coinbase listing. We also had one of our clients, Banksa, that we watched them go from. They received from one of our investors. They received a 500K investment in 2017 at I think it was like a 2.5 mil pre-money val. And they ended up getting like a 37 to 40 times exit. And that was all documented sort of online with Alien Capital. But they ended up having to list in Canada because the ASX makes it difficult, is not that sort of welcoming at this stage to sort of, cryptocurrency related companies.
Right. Yeah, during the ICO boom, right, it's very common to get, say, between 10x to 20x kind of return. In some cases, if you are lucky to get in at the private sale early on, you can get a 50x. And the market went through a period of kind of a death valley, right, in the 2018 during bear period. But thanks to DeFi and new farming, a lot of new projects that came up with great concepts, they were able to give investors the kind of 20x to 100x kind of range. But again, it's a kind of a small cap category right now, so still very high risk, and it's not for everyone. The other trend that we're seeing now is the regulated space in some of the countries where the regulators are more kind of adventurous or progressive, depending on how you look at it. They have
open to doing business.
yeah, they're doing business. They are embracing this segment and offering license, right? So Singapore is a great example. We have also looked at the digital payment token as kind of as part of a segment that they want to embrace. So the Payments Service Act has been approved and put in place right now. We have more than 200 different companies, including the traditional payments and the digital payments operators, getting themselves regulated and licensed. So this will see another major boom. We are seeing things like the RMO regulated market operators. We have two exchange, 1x and iStocks, who uses blockchain technology to kind of facilitate the decentralized kind of investments.
And to highlight both of those, iStocks just recently took on 50 million of capital, which blew me away. Given that they're so early in their, so early at the start, and then obviously one exchange has also raised a significant amounts of money. By the way, I'm back. I'm back now.
Okay. Hi, Steve. Thanks for
coming. Hi, mate. Glad you kept on chatting away. I don't know what happened then. Very strange.
Are we live? Are we still live?
Yeah, we're live. We've gone. I've gone live. So apologies for everyone that's on the stream. For the first time in like literally 3 months, my internet just disappeared. And I'm not sure why. Anyway, but thank you for continuing chatting, mate. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, Frank was just asking about the FX business, whether it would be affected by blockchain. So I was just giving my 2 cents worth of my take, because I was just saying
there's actually one that's set up in Australia called Flash FX that actually do their transfers based on Ripple.
Yes. Yeah, so that's one of the proposition for the blockchain, right? They're trying to lower the cost of transaction in the banking system. So there are a lot of these blockchain as a service offerings from the blockchain startup companies trying to reduce the cost of transaction, whether it's an interbank or across the different banks or within the bank itself. So that's the proposition. And FX traders has been kind of educating the market. A lot of them are in the crypto space and options, derivatives. All these tradings are really increasing at the increasing rate. So we're seeing a lot of adoption right now. Yeah, even the cryptocurrency exchange like Huobi, Binance, OKEX, Deribit, all these exchanges are seeing a phenomenal growth in derivative exchange, and a lot of this came from the FX world.
The two interesting things for me is now I'm actually seeing blockchain companies that have actually got real life case studies where they're actually generating revenue. They've got interesting transactions. Like there's one, obviously the area of sort of digitizing gold has been one of the easier ones that you see a lot of adoption across. And then the other one is AxiChain, which is one of the clients presenting on Friday at Emergence. Basically all they're doing is they're allowing for the transactions for the purchase of beef between China and Australia to be done completely on blockchain and allow them to track their and it's interesting to see from a technology perspective how it removes like 40 different bits of sort of small transactions during the process or inefficiencies. To me, it says that it obviously creates so much potential outside of just that sort of, let's call it trading or currency aspect.
Yeah. So another use case I can share here is one of my portfolio in Singapore called Sparrow Exchange, right? So they provide options trading of Bitcoin-based and Ethereum-based options, where users and financial institutions and family offices you can sell and sell and sell call options and put options and generate pretty much guaranteed kind of yield, right, up to 6%, and like a fixed income product. And it has taken off pretty well with a growing AUM, contributed by family office, institutions,
Wow.
etc. So this is a very good use case. Right, and then one last point on Steve, your question before you went offline just now on some of the trends in Singapore. I was just about to say that the regulators in Singapore, as well as in some countries like Switzerland, are setting up some great example. I'll give you another example of my portfolio called this Smart Vela. Smart Vela, they have received the first so-called digital asset exchange and custodian license from Liechtenstein, right? And that allows them to kind of trade these assets and tokenize assets on the platform, and fund managers or investors from the traditional world can actually go on board on the Smart Vela platform, convert their fiat Swiss franc or USD into the platform token like Vela, and they can invest in alternative assets. It could be other funds, could be vineyard, could be real estate, etc. So licensing is one of the major important step for this sector to take off, especially in the digital asset exchange. Another one like application is like I have another portfolio called Stein, also based out of Zurich. They have got a fintech license. It's pretty much like a digital bank license, which allows them to onboard investors, users, and accept deposits from fiat currency, and they can exchange into